In this tutorial, I'm going to walk you through how to install 2 instances of SQL in one server. That means we're going to have 2 SQL engines running within a server. So the first thing we need to do is to download the SQL installer if you don't have it, by looking for, you need to go to Internet Explorer and search for SQL Developer Edition. So you're going to click on the download. Then you're going to click on SQL Server download for Microsoft. From there, we're going to download the developer edition. So you click on this download. So this is going to download the developer for you. So after that, you're going to go into the drive where the installer already downloaded it earlier before starting this tutorial. So the next step is, let's close this window. You're going to double click on the file that was downloaded. So this is going to give you option to either install the SQL Server directly by clicking on the basic, or if you want to download the install media. So since we're going to do the installation twice, it's better for us to download the media. So that is the ISO file. You're going to click on the download media. Then you select the location where you want the media, the ISO file to be downloaded, and you click on download. So after that, you now find your ISO file in the folder that you selected. Now to start the installation, you're going to click on the SQL installer, and that's going to open the window for us to start the installation. So I'm going to click on the startup. Okay. Just going to click on the installation, new SQL standalone installation. So the first step, we're going to do the default installation. Then once that is done, we're going to come back and install the SQL the second time. That is going to be the second instance. Okay, so we have a SQL Developer Edition. Click on next. We're going to accept the license. Then this next page is going to check the system to determine if there's an update. We're going to check on that to update if there's any need to do that. The system is going to check the files and make sure that there is nothing to be updated. Okay, we get one warning. That means we need to remember to open our firewall if we need to open our SQL to external application. Okay, so this is asking us if we have a SQL extension in Azure. We don't have that. We're going to uncheck. Go to next. We just want to install the SQL engine. So you select the SQL, and now we're going to install the replication also. Now, in a standard way, the best way to do the installation of SQL is to separate your installer. If you install on C drive, if the computer crashes, then you're going to be in trouble. Your SQL is going to be offline and everything is gone. So that is why it's good to have a separate disk where you're going to install your SQL. So we're going to install our SQL in A drive, the installer drive. So we're going to change this C to A. This is to make sure that all our files are installed in A drive. So we're going to click on next. Okay, so since this is the first instance, so we're going to go with the default, which is going to take the name of the server that we're installing the SQL on. So we're going to click next on this. But if you want to change the name, you can go ahead and click on the name instance and give it a name. But I want my first instance of the SQL to have the name of the server that I'm installing on. So for here, if you have your SQL service account, you can provide it, but I'm going to go ahead and use the NT service, and I grant permission to the volume maintenance. Then it's good to have a miss mode. Some company, they don't want that because having a SA account without being able to manage the password very well can be vulnerable to the SQL. But in some cases, if there's any issue with the Active Directory, you're going to need your SA account to be able to access to have access to the SQL Server. So it's good to enable it. You just need to make sure that you keep the password safe. So I'm going to go ahead and provide a password for my SA account. Okay, then I'm going to add the current user. So if there's any group account that you want to add from Active Directory, you can click on add, go to Active Directory and add it. Right now, I don't have any. The next is going to go to the data directory. We're going to provide a user database folder, which is a different drive. So we're going to use the data drive to store all our user databases so that the data drive and the log drive will be separated. So we're going to select this for the data drive. I'm going to go into a D, which is the data drive. In order for this to be well grouped, it's good to create a folder within the drive. So that when we install the second instance, we'll be able to save it in a different drive. So for log, we're going to select and create a log file. And for backup, I'm going to go in, look for the backup drive, create a folder. A backup name. So then we go and look for the temp, remove this one, add the one for temp db, create a new folder. Okay, going to select that, and the mass dub, want to leave this the way it is, the memory, select the recommended the file stream. So click on next. Now this is going to go ahead and install SQL for us with all the configuration we selected. So I'm going to allow this to run. Once it finishes, I'll come back. We can look at it together. Okay, the installation is almost complete. So when this is done, we're going to go ahead and restart the server and start the second installation. We're going to go through the same process, but the only difference is we're going to provide a name for the second instance so that when we going to log in or to connect to the database, we'll be able to identify the second instance by the name we give to it. Okay, solution is successful. Now click on this, right click on the server and restart it. Okay, the server is back on. Let's go ahead and go to the configuration manager and confirm that we have our first installation up and running. Start this. Let's see if we can get. So we're going to go ahead and start all the services to be sure that SQL is up and running. So automatically. So we're going to go ahead and start the second installation by double click on the disk, the same one that we downloaded earlier, and click on the setup. So we're going to go through the same setup. The only difference is we're going to select a different, we're going to provide a name for our SQL Server. We're going to put this on the side. Are we going to use the same disk? But in this situation, we're going to go ahead and create a different folder. So click installation. Then we'll allow this installer window to open, just like we did in the first installation. Okay, just like before. The setup file is go through the checkout to determine there's going to be an update, no update. So we click on next. Now, before, if you're trying to add additional feature to the previously installed, the one that we installed earlier, let's assume you want to add like SSIS package. Sorry, if you want to add like a analysis service, or you want to add SSRS, then go ahead and click on this and add more feature. But we're going to perform a new installation of SQL. So we're going to select the one at the top, click on next. We're going to use SQL Developer, accept the license. We don't have Azure extension. Then we're going to select the SQL engine and SQL replication. Everything's still going to go to E drive. I'm going to click on next. Okay, this is where we're going to provide a name for the new instance. So I'm going to call this instance 1. Instance 1. Because the other one is going to be the default. So you need to remember this name because this is the name we're going to be using to connect. So this can be any name, but I'm just giving it a generic name for me to be able to identify it whenever I want to connect. So your naming convention might be different within your company. Each company has a way of naming their server. It might be the server name followed by the SQL instance or SQL version, followed by the environment, whether it's going to be like a test, production, or dev environment. But this is just a generic name, so it works for me for now. Then the instance ID is going to be the same thing. Then I'm going to click on next. Okay, just like before, we're going to use the SQL, so the NT service. I'm going to change this to automatic. I'm going to click next. Then still going to do miss mode, provide a password. You don't have to create the same password. This can use a different password because they are two different servers. Even though they're in the same system, they're in the same SQL server, they are regarded as different SQL environment. So here we're going to go ahead and look for the user drive. It's going to be the same thing as the drive, but we're going to create a different folder for this. Data 2. Okay. Then for log, log 2. And now for our backup, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. Select the backup, create a folder. Okay, so the temp DB, remove this one, go into the temp and create the same folder for temp. Okay, and master going to remain in memory, remain the same thing. This is going to go back and tweak the memory because since we are having two instances of SQL on the same server, you want to set up your memory so that you take into consideration the amount of memory you have, the number of memory data Windows is going to use, and each one of the SQL instances so that you don't have a issue with the performance. So I'm going to click on next. So we're going to click on the install, and once the installation is complete, we're going to go back, we're going to come back and look at the two instances together. But before I go, we're going to need to install the SQL Management Studio. So let's quickly go ahead and download that. So that is a client that we're going to use to connect to SQL. So we're going to go here and download it. It's free. This is a free version from Microsoft. Microsoft provides the client free. You do have to pay for the license, just as you don't have to pay for the SQL developer license because it's a free one, but you cannot use it in production environment. It has the same functionality as SQL Enterprise Edition, but you cannot use SQL Developer in the production environment. So it's a free version, but you can use it in production. Okay, so while this is getting downloaded, the installation is almost complete because we already did the first installation. Might take time, but the second one is going to go faster because most of the engines that need to be installed are already been installed earlier. We're just going to go ahead and create a second one on top of that. So that's why this installation is running faster. So once this is done, we're going to go ahead and install the SSMS. So let's wait for this to complete. Okay, the installation is complete. I'm going to click close on this. We're going to go ahead and install Management Studio because we're going to use that to connect to the two environment. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. While this is loading, go ahead and close this one too. We're done with the installation. Then we can go to the configuration manager to see the two services, make sure they are running. So output environment, the first one is SQL and the second one is SQL instance one. So I'm going to go ahead and install the Management Studio. So this is how to install the SQL instances, having two installation of SQL in one server. In most environments in enterprise world, you don't have to install the two instances in one because except you have enough memory, this is going to affect performance. But if you're setting up environment for a developer in dev environment, maybe you have a lot of developer and each one of them need their own instances of SQL, which is possible in some cases. Then this is how you can manage the tool, the resources that you have by installing the two instances of SQL within a server. So this is going to save you money and make it easy for all developers to be able to connect to the instances that they want to use. Now, you can use one as a dev and use the second one as a test environment. Even though they're both in the same server, it will be easy for you to separate the test and dev for the developers, and they'll be able to deploy all the developers, use one of them for the development and use the second one for testing. Okay, so once this comes up, we're going to go ahead and connect to the two to the two instances that we have. The installation is complete. I'll close this. Go ahead and open our Management Studio for the first time. Let's assume you don't know the name of your databases, the instance. So these are the two instances. The first one takes the name of the server, which is a Smart Student DB. And the second one takes the name of the server / the instance. So in order to connect to the second instances on any SQL, if they are all in the same server, you need to use a / with the name of the instance. So let's first connect to the first one. So we got this error. So in most situations when you try to install to connect to SQL, it's going to use an XSL, like an encryption certificate is required for that to work. Most especially if you're trying to connect the SQL server in the cloud. But this is on-prem SQL. So in order to resolve this, you need to go into the option and uncheck under the property, uncheck the encryption property. So for now, go back and click on connect to be able to connect. You can go back and connect to the second instance of SQL. Now we have two SQL environments installed on the same server, and you can go ahead and create your databases and manage the, you can go ahead and manage the two SQL server as if they are in a two different environment, even though they are installed on the same server. So thank you for joining in this quick tutorial, and I wish this help you. And let me know if you have any question